In a quaint little town surrounded by lush green hills and winding rivers, life moved at its own gentle pace. The air was always filled with the sweet scent of blooming flowers in spring and the crisp freshness of autumn leaves. It was here, amidst this peaceful setting, that a young boy named Ethan lived with his loving family. Ethan was no ordinary child. He had a heart full of dreams, but a body that refused to cooperate due to cerebral palsy, a condition he'd been born with. For as long as anyone could remember, Ethan had relied on a wheelchair to get around. While it allowed him some independence, it also served as a constant reminder of the things he couldn't do, like running through fields or climbing trees like other kids his age. Despite the challenges, Ethan rarely complained. He had an infectious smile that lit up every room he entered, and a curious mind that soaked up knowledge like a sponge. His favorite pastime was sitting by the window, watching children play outside while imagining himself joining them. Sometimes, late at night when everyone else was asleep, Ethan would whisper his secret wish into the darkness. "I just want to walk once, just one step." But those words stayed locked inside him, never spoken aloud, because he didn't want to burden his already caring parents. Ethan's family adored him deeply. His mother spent hours reading stories to him, her voice soft and soothing, while his father built miniature models of cars and planes to keep him entertained. They did everything they could to make sure Ethan felt loved and included, shielding him from pity while encouraging his dreams. Still, there were moments when sadness crept into their eyes, moments when they wished they could wave a magic wand and take away his struggles. Yet, what they didn't realize was that Ethan's strength inspired them more than they realized. Not far from their home, stationed in the nearby city, was Captain Liam Carter, a member of the Royal Guard known for his impeccable discipline and towering presence. Clad in his ceremonial uniform, complete from polished boots to gleaming insignias, he commanded respect wherever he went. But beneath the stern exterior lay a man with a tender heart. Few people knew that Captain Carter spent his free time volunteering at local rehabilitation centers, working closely with children who faced physical challenges. He believed that every child deserved a chance to shine, regardless of their circumstances. Captain Carter's passion stemmed from personal experience. As a young recruit, he had struggled immensely during training, often doubling over in exhaustion after grueling drills. Many times, he thought about quitting, but something inside him pushed him forward. That same inner drive now fueled his desire to help others overcome their obstacles. To him, seeing someone achieve even the smallest victory felt like witnessing a miracle. And though he rarely spoke about it, these experiences gave meaning to his otherwise rigid military life. Little did anyone know, fate was about to intertwine the lives of Ethan and Captain Carter in ways neither of them could have imagined. The stage was set, a quiet hero ready to inspire, and a brave boy waiting to be inspired. What began as an ordinary day in the sleepy town would soon turn into a story of courage, hope, and transformation that touched the hearts of many. The park buzzed with energy as Ethan's incredible feat continued to ripple through the crowd. People couldn't stop talking about what they had just witnessed, a boy who had spent most of his life in a wheelchair taking his first unaided steps. The moment wasn't just inspiring, it was transformative, leaving an indelible mark on everyone present. But no one felt its impact more deeply than Ethan's family. Ethan's parents stood off to the side, clutching each other tightly as tears streamed down their faces. They had dreamed of this day for years, praying silently that Ethan might someday experience the freedom of walking. Yet deep down, they had doubted whether it would ever happen. Seeing their son stand and take those shaky steps filled them with emotions too powerful to contain. His mother buried her face in her hands, sobbing uncontrollably, while his father wrapped an arm around her, his own eyes glistening. "He did it," his dad whispered hoarsely, almost unable to believe it himself. "Our boy really did it." Nearby, Carter watched the scene unfold, humbled by the magnitude of what had transpired. He hadn't expected such an overwhelming reaction, not just from Ethan's family, but from the entire community. Strangers approached him, shaking his hand and thanking him for giving Ethan the confidence to achieve something so extraordinary. One elderly woman hugged him tightly, saying, "You've given us all hope today." Carter accepted their gratitude graciously, though he knew the credit belonged entirely to Ethan. "I didn't do anything special," he replied modestly. "It was Ethan's strength and determination that made this possible." Meanwhile, Ethan sat surrounded by friends and well-wishers, basking in the glow of his accomplishment. For once, he wasn't the quiet observer watching from the sidelines. He was the center of attention, celebrated not out of pity but out of admiration. Children ran up to him, wide-eyed and excited, asking how he managed to walk. "I practiced a lot," Ethan explained with a shy smile, glancing over at Carter. "And Captain Carter helped me believe I could do it." As the sun began to set, casting golden hues across the park, Ethan's mother walked over to Carter, her voice trembling with emotion. "We don't know how to thank you," she said, placing a hand on his arm. "You've changed our lives forever." Carter shook his head gently, his expression softening. "Don't thank me," he replied. "Thank Ethan. He's the one who put in the work, who never gave up even when things got tough. All I did was remind him of what he was capable of." Later that evening, as the festivities wound down, Ethan's family gathered around him for a quiet moment. His dad knelt beside him, looking into his eyes with pride. "Do you realize what you've done today?" he asked softly. Ethan nodded, still processing everything that had happened. "I walked," he said simply, his voice filled with wonder. "And you'll keep walking," his mom added, kissing his forehead. "This is just the beginning, sweetheart." For Carter, the day ended with a sense of fulfillment he hadn't felt in years. As he drove back to the city, he reflected on the journey he'd shared with Ethan. What started as a simple act of kindness had blossomed into something far greater, a testament to the power of belief, perseverance, and human connection. Though he would return to his duties as a royal guard, part of him would always remain tied to Ethan and the small town where dreams came true. Back home, Ethan lay in bed, replaying the events of the day in his mind. The cheers, the hugs, the look of pride on his parents' faces. It was almost too much to comprehend. But one thing was clear. He had proven to himself that he was capable of achieving the impossible. As sleep finally overtook him, a single thought lingered in his heart. If I can walk, what else can I do? And with that question, Ethan drifted off, dreaming of new adventures and endless possibilities. There comes a point in every journey where the road feels impossibly steep, and for Ethan, that moment arrived on a gray, overcast afternoon. The weather mirrored his mood, cloudy and heavy. As he sat slumped in his wheelchair, staring at the walker propped against the wall. It had been weeks since his last breakthrough, and no matter how hard he tried, his legs refused to cooperate. Every attempt to stand ended in trembling muscles and frustration. Today's session was no different. After yet another failed effort to balance himself, Ethan let out a defeated sigh, tears streaming down his cheeks. "I'll never walk," he whispered, his voice cracking under the weight of despair. Captain Carter knelt beside him, his heart aching at the sight of Ethan's anguish. For all his training and experience, moments like these were the hardest to navigate. He knew better than anyone that pushing too hard could break someone's spirit, but giving up wasn't an option either. Taking a deep breath, he placed a gentle hand on Ethan's shoulder. "Hey," he said softly, waiting until Ethan met his gaze. "You're allowed to feel upset. This isn't easy, and nobody expects you to be perfect. But I need you to remember something. Even the strongest people fall sometimes. What makes them strong is that they get back up." Ethan sniffled, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. "But what if I can't?" he asked, his voice barely audible. Carter leaned in closer, his tone unwavering. "What if you can? Ethan, think about everything you've already done. You've stood taller than most adults I know. You've worked harder than anyone I've ever met. Do you really want to let one bad day stop you from reaching your dream?" For a long moment, Ethan didn't respond. His mind raced with conflicting thoughts, doubt battling determination. Finally, he shook his head slowly. "No," he murmured. "I don't want to stop." Carter smiled, relief washing over him. "Good, because I believe in you, Ethan. And so does your family. We're not here to watch you quit. We're here to see you shine." To lift Ethan's spirits, Carter decided to shift gears. Instead of focusing solely on physical exercises, he shared more stories of resilience, drawing parallels between Ethan's struggles and those of legendary figures. "Did you know that even kings and queens faced failures before they wore their crowns?" he asked, pulling out a book filled with tales of historical heroes. Together, they read about a young prince who stumbled countless times while learning to ride a horse, but eventually became one of the greatest warriors in history. Another story told of a queen who endured ridicule and hardship before leading her kingdom to victory. "They didn't give up when things got tough," Carter emphasized. "And neither will you." That evening, as raindrops pattered against the windows, Carter introduced a new exercise designed to rebuild Ethan's confidence. Using soft foam blocks, they created a short obstacle course indoors. The goal was simple. Ethan would use the walker to navigate around the blocks, focusing less on perfection and more on persistence. At first, progress was slow, but each successful movement reignited a spark within him. By the end of the session, Ethan managed to complete the course without assistance, his face glowing with pride. "See," Carter said with a grin, "you're unstoppable when you put your mind to it." Though the clouds outside hadn't cleared, Ethan's outlook had brightened considerably. That night, as he lay in bed, he replayed the day's events in his mind. He realized that setbacks weren't failures. They were just stepping stones on the path to success. With renewed determination, he whispered to himself, "I'm going to keep trying. I won't give up." Carter, too, reflected on the day as he drove home. Helping Ethan reminded him why he cared so deeply about making a difference. Yes, the road ahead would still have its challenges, but together they were proving that perseverance could move mountains, or, in this case, help a boy take his first steps toward freedom. The very next week, Captain Liam Carter returned to the small town, determined to make good on his promise to Ethan. Dressed in casual clothes instead of his formal uniform, he arrived at Ethan's house carrying a bag filled with items that looked more like toys than tools. Inside were brightly colored resistance bands, a lightweight walker designed for children, and foam pads shaped like animals. To Ethan, it felt less like therapy equipment and more like a treasure chest waiting to be explored. Carter's goal was clear. He wanted to turn hard work into fun, making each session something Ethan would look forward to rather than dread. At first, Ethan was hesitant. The idea of trying to stand, something he'd never done before, felt daunting. His parents watched nervously from the sidelines as Carter knelt beside him, speaking in the same calm and encouraging tone he'd used during their meeting at the fair. "Ethan," he began, "we're not going to rush anything. We'll take it one tiny step at a time. Literally." He chuckled softly, hoping to ease any tension. "And guess what? You're already stronger than you think." To break the ice, Carter started by telling stories about his own struggles during military training. He described how he once collapsed after running just half a mile, feeling defeated and ready to give up. But instead of quitting, he reminded himself why he started: to protect people and make a difference. Slowly, day by day, he built up his strength until he could run miles without stopping. "It's all about believing in yourself," Carter said, looking directly at Ethan. "If I can do it, so can you." Ethan listened intently, captivated not only by the story but also by the way Carter spoke, with genuine belief in his words. It made him feel special, like someone truly saw potential in him. Encouraged, Ethan agreed to try using the walker for the first time. With Carter guiding him gently from behind, Ethan gripped the handles tightly, his knuckles turning white as he focused all his energy on standing upright. For a brief moment, He managed to lift himself slightly off the seat of his wheelchair, though his legs wobbled uncontrollably. Exhausted but exhilarated, he sank back down, grinning despite the effort. Over the following weeks, these sessions became a regular part of Ethan's routine. Each visit brought new challenges and small victories. One day, Carter brought along a set of animal-shaped stickers, rewarding Ethan every time he completed a task. Another time, he turned balancing exercises into a game, pretending they were astronauts learning to walk on the moon. Ethan laughed as he teetered unsteadily, imagining himself floating in space. These playful moments helped distract him from the physical strain, keeping his spirits high even when progress seemed slow. As trust grew between them, so did their bond. Carter wasn't just a mentor anymore. He became a friend Ethan eagerly awaited each week. They shared jokes, talked about their favorite foods, and even debated which superhero was the strongest. Through these conversations, Carter learned more about Ethan's dreams, how much he loved drawing pictures of dragons and castles, and how he hoped to one day climb a tree like the ones he admired outside his window. In turn, Ethan discovered that beneath Carter's disciplined exterior lay a man who cared deeply about helping others succeed. Ethan's parents noticed the change in their son almost immediately. Gone was the quiet resignation they'd seen for so long. Instead, Ethan radiated excitement, talking animatedly about his sessions and proudly showing off the stickers he'd earned. Seeing their boy light up like this filled them with gratitude and hope. For the first time in years, they allowed themselves to imagine a future where Ethan might achieve the impossible. But perhaps the most remarkable transformation was within Ethan himself. What had once seemed like an unreachable dream now felt tantalizingly close. Every shaky attempt to stand reminded him of Carter's words, "You're stronger than you think." And though he still had a long road ahead, Ethan began to believe, not just in Carter's faith in him, but in his own ability to rise above his limitations. On a bright and sunny Saturday morning, the small town buzzed with excitement as residents gathered for the annual community fair. Colorful stalls lined the streets, offering homemade treats, handmade crafts, and games for children. Laughter filled the air, mingling with the scent of freshly baked pies and blooming flowers. For Ethan, this was one of his favorite days of the year. Though he couldn't join in most activities, he loved watching the festivities from his wheelchair, taking it all in with wide-eyed wonder. Ethan's parents had pushed him to the heart of the fair, where a small stage stood surrounded by hay bales and fluttering ribbons. Local performers danced and sang while families clapped along, creating an atmosphere of joy and togetherness. As Ethan watched, his attention shifted to a group of children playing tag nearby. Their laughter echoed like music, and for a moment, he imagined himself running alongside them. Feeling the wind against his face, he sighed softly, pulling his gaze away before anyone noticed the fleeting sadness in his eyes. Unbeknownst to Ethan, someone was already watching him. Captain Liam Carter, dressed in his formal Royal Guard uniform, stood near the edge of the crowd. He had been invited to attend the event as part of a goodwill initiative to connect with local communities. While others admired his polished appearance and dignified stance, Carter's focus wasn't on himself. It was on the boy sitting quietly in the wheelchair. Something about Ethan caught his eye. The way he observed the world around him with such intensity, as if trying to memorize every detail. There was a quiet strength in the boy that resonated deeply with Carter. Curiosity tugged at him, and after a brief internal debate, Carter decided to approach Ethan. Walking over, he knelt down slowly so he wouldn't appear intimidating. His tall frame loomed above Ethan at first, but when he lowered himself to the boy's level, his expression softened into a warm smile. "Hello there," Carter said gently. "What's your name?" Ethan looked up, startled. At first, he hesitated, unsure how to respond to this towering figure in uniform. But something in Carter's voice, calm, kind, and sincere, put him at ease. "I'm Ethan," he replied shyly, clutching the armrests of his wheelchair. "Well, Ethan, it's nice to meet you," Carter said, his tone friendly. I see you've got a great spot here to watch everything. Are you enjoying the fair? Ethan nodded, though his eyes darted toward the children playing again. Noticing this, Carter followed his gaze. After a pause, he asked, "Do you ever wish you could play like them? Or maybe, take a few steps?" The question hung in the air, simple yet profound. Ethan's cheeks flushed red, caught off guard by the directness of it. For a moment, he didn't answer, torn between embarrassment and the truth. Finally, he whispered, almost too softly to hear, "Yeah, I'd like that." Carter's heart swelled at the honesty in Ethan's voice. He leaned in slightly, his blue eyes locking onto Ethan's. "You know, sometimes we don't realize how strong we are until we try. What if I told you I could help you work toward taking those steps someday? Would you be interested?" Ethan blinked, surprised. No one had ever offered him something like this before. Before he could respond, his parents approached, wary of the strangers speaking to their son. Sensing their concern, Carter introduced himself, explaining his role as a volunteer with disabled children. As they listened, their initial hesitation melted into curiosity. By the end of the conversation, Ethan's mother managed a hopeful smile, while his father shook Carter's hand firmly, thanking him for his kindness. As the day drew to a close, Ethan found himself glancing back at the tall man in uniform several times. Though their meeting had been brief, it left an indelible mark on both of them. For Ethan, it sparked a flicker of hope, a possibility he hadn't dared to dream of. And for Carter, it ignited a sense of purpose, reminding him why he chose to dedicate his life to helping others. Neither of them knew it yet, but this chance encounter would become the beginning of an extraordinary journey. Word of Ethan's incredible achievement spread far beyond the boundaries of their small town. Local newspapers wrote heartfelt articles about the boy who took his first steps with the help of a compassionate royal guard. Social media platforms lit up with videos and photos from the park, capturing the raw emotion of the moment. Ethan's shaky steps, his parents' tearful embrace, and Carter's proud smile. People from neighboring towns and even distant cities reached out to share messages of encouragement, inspired by the story of resilience and hope. For many families facing similar challenges, Ethan's journey became a beacon of light. Parents of children with disabilities found solace in knowing that progress, no matter how slow or difficult, was possible. One mother wrote to Ethan's family, saying, "Your son has shown us that miracles happen when we believe in our children and support them every step of the way." Another father shared how Carter's dedication reminded him to never underestimate the power of kindness and patience. Ethan's story wasn't just his own. It had become a source of strength for countless others navigating their own battles. As weeks turned into months, Ethan continued to build on his newfound ability. Walking remained challenging, but he embraced each session with renewed determination. He started attending physical therapy classes at a nearby center, where therapists marveled at his grit and positivity. "Ethan doesn't see obstacles," one therapist remarked to his parents. "He sees opportunities to grow." Slowly but surely, he gained confidence, taking longer strides and relying less on the walker. His dream of climbing a tree still lingered, and though it seemed distant, he knew it was within reach. Captain Carter returned to his duties as a royal guard, but his connection with Ethan remained strong. They exchanged letters regularly, sharing updates and words of encouragement. In one letter, Carter wrote, "You've taught me more than I ever hoped to teach you, Ethan. Your courage reminds me why I chose this path, to serve and inspire others." Ethan replied with a drawing of himself standing tall beside a figure in uniform, captioned, "My hero." The bond they formed transcended roles. They were mentor and student, friend and confidant, united by a shared belief in the impossible. Ethan's family noticed subtle yet profound changes in him. The once shy and reserved boy now greeted strangers with a warm smile, eager to share his story. At school, he became an advocate for inclusion, encouraging teachers and classmates to create environments where everyone felt valued. His artwork adorned classroom walls, depicting vibrant scenes of dragons soaring above castles, a reflection of his boundless imagination and newfound freedom. For Ethan, walking wasn't just about mobility. It symbolized breaking free from limitations and embracing life fully. The ripple effect of Ethan's triumph extended to the community as well. Inspired by his perseverance, local leaders organized events to raise awareness about accessibility and support for individuals with disabilities. The annual fair where Ethan's journey began now included booths dedicated to adaptive sports and resources for families. A scholarship fund was established in Ethan's name, providing financial assistance to children pursuing therapies and assistive technologies. What started as a personal milestone blossomed into a movement, igniting change and fostering inclusivity. Years later, when asked about that unforgettable day in the park, Ethan's response was always the same. It wasn't just my victory. It belonged to everyone who believed in me. And while Carter moved on to new assignments, his legacy lived on through the lives he touched. For Ethan, the road ahead would still hold challenges, but he faced them with unwavering optimism. Each step he took reinforced the lesson he learned early on. That strength isn't measured by how much you can endure, but by how willing you are to keep trying. In the end, Ethan's story wasn't just about walking. It was about rising above adversity, discovering inner strength, and inspiring others to do the same. It was proof that compassion could transform lives, that perseverance could move mountains, and that even the smallest victories could spark monumental change. As Ethan stood tall under the open sky, gazing at the horizon, he knew one thing for certain. The world was wide open, waiting for him to explore it, one brave step at a time. Months of hard work and unwavering determination finally led to a day that would change Ethan's life forever, his birthday. Captain Carter had been planning this moment for weeks, keeping it a secret even from Ethan's parents. He wanted the occasion to be special, not just because it marked another year of Ethan's life, but because it symbolized how far he'd come. The park where they'd first met during the community fair was transformed into a cheerful gathering spot, decorated with balloons, streamers, and a large banner that read, "Happy Birthday, Ethan." Friends, neighbors, and local townsfolk gathered, curious about what Carter had described as a very special demonstration. Ethan arrived with his family, completely unaware of what awaited him. His eyes widened in surprise as he saw the crowd cheering and clapping for him. "What's all this?" he asked, looking up at his mom and dad with a mix of excitement and confusion. His mother knelt beside him, her voice trembling with emotion. "It's your day, sweetheart," she said, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. "Captain Carter has something planned for you." Ethan's gaze shifted to Carter, who stood nearby, smiling warmly. For once, the tall soldier didn't seem intimidating. He looked like someone brimming with pride. Carter approached Ethan, holding the familiar walker in his hands. "Today's a big day," he announced, his voice steady but filled with anticipation. "We've worked so hard together, haven't we? Every step, every try. It's all brought us here. Are you ready to show everyone what you can do?" Ethan hesitated for a moment, glancing at the crowd, and then back at Carter. Despite his nerves, he nodded firmly. "Okay," he said, gripping the sides of his wheelchair. "Let's do it." With Carter guiding him, Ethan positioned himself in front of the walker. The air grew still as everyone held their breath, watching intently. Carter placed his hands lightly on Ethan's back, offering support without taking over. "Remember," he whispered encouragingly, "you're stronger than you think. Just focus on one step at a time." Ethan took a deep breath, summoning every ounce of courage he possessed. Slowly, he pushed himself up, his legs trembling under the unfamiliar weight. For a brief second, he wobbled, and gasps rippled through the crowd. But Carter steadied him gently, whispering, "You've got this, champ." Summoning strength he didn't know he had, Ethan locked his knees and stood upright, balancing precariously but determinedly. Cheers erupted around them, but Ethan barely heard them. All he could feel was the ground beneath his feet. For the first time in his life, he was standing on his own. The next part was the hardest, taking a step. Clutching the walker tightly, Ethan lifted one foot ever so slightly off the ground and moved it forward. His movement was shaky, uncertain, but undeniable. Another step followed, then another, each one drawing louder applause from the onlookers. Tears streamed down his parents' faces as they watched their son defy every limitation that had once seemed insurmountable. Even Carter, usually stoic and composed, blinked away tears, his heart swelling with pride. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Ethan reached the end of his short journey. Turning around, he looked at the crowd, his chest heaving with exertion, but his face glowing with triumph. "I did it," he said, his voice shaking with disbelief and joy. The words hung in the air, echoing across the park as the crowd erupted into thunderous applause. People wiped their eyes, hugged each other, and cheered for the boy who had taken his first steps, not just physically, but emotionally and mentally as well. For Ethan, the moment was surreal. He turned to Carter, who knelt beside him once more, this time to offer a heartfelt hug. "Thank you," Ethan whispered, his voice breaking. "I couldn't have done it without you." Carter smiled, ruffling his hair affectionately. "You did it yourself, Ethan. I just showed you the way." As the celebration continued, Ethan sat surrounded by loved ones, basking in the warmth of their admiration. It wasn't just his victory. It belonged to everyone who had believed in him, supported him, and refused to let him give up. And though the road ahead would still hold challenges, Ethan now knew one thing for certain. If he could take these first steps, there was nothing he couldn't achieve. As weeks turned into months, Ethan's progress became a beacon of hope for everyone involved. Each session with Captain Carter brought new milestones, no matter how small they seemed. From lifting his legs slightly off the ground to standing upright for a few seconds, every achievement was celebrated like a grand victory. But as their journey continued, Carter began to nurture an even bolder goal in his mind, helping Ethan take his very first unaided steps. It wasn't just about walking. It was about proving to Ethan that he could overcome anything if he set his heart to it. Carter introduced this ambitious idea during one of their evening sessions. Sitting cross-legged on the floor beside Ethan, he held up a colorful drawing of a winding path leading to a bright castle. "Ethan," he said with a playful smile, "what do you think this is?" Ethan studied the picture carefully before answering. "It looks like a road. Maybe to a magical place." Carter nodded enthusiastically. "Exactly. And what if I told you we're building your own magic road right here? A road where you'll walk all by yourself someday." Ethan's eyes widened at the thought. The idea of walking without assistance felt like something out of a fairy tale, yet the way Carter spoke made it sound possible. Still, doubt lingered in the back of his mind. "But what if I can't do it?" he asked hesitantly, his voice barely above a whisper. Carter leaned closer, his expression soft but firm. "Ethan, remember when I told you about my training? There were days when I thought I couldn't keep going either. But guess what? I did. And so will you. We'll take it step by step, literally. And before you know it, you'll be standing tall." To prepare Ethan for this daunting challenge, Carter devised a plan that combined physical exercises with mental encouragement. They started practicing transitions, from sitting to standing, then shifting weight from one leg to the other. At first, these movements were awkward and exhausting, leaving Ethan drenched in sweat after just a few minutes. But Carter never let him give up. Instead, he cheered him on, clapping loudly and shouting, "That's it. You've got this." His enthusiasm was infectious, pushing Ethan to try just a little harder each time. One particularly grueling session tested both their patience. Ethan had been working on balancing himself while holding onto the walker, but his legs trembled uncontrollably, refusing to cooperate. Frustration bubbled over as tears welled up in his eyes. "I can't do it," he cried, collapsing back into his wheelchair. Carter crouched down beside him, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. Hey, listen to me," he said gently. You're doing amazing. Every great hero faces tough battles before they win. This is yours, Ethan. And I promise you, you're stronger than you feel right now." Though Carter's words offered comfort, Ethan's parents couldn't help but worry. Late one night, after tucking Ethan into bed, they sat together in the living room, discussing their fears. "What if he gets hurt?" Ethan's mother whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Or worse, what if he loses hope again?" Her husband sighed, rubbing his temples. "I don't know," he admitted. "But look at him. Love. He's happier than he's ever been. Maybe this is worth the risk." Meanwhile, Carter wrestled with his own doubts. Was he pushing Ethan too hard? Could he truly deliver on such a monumental promise? On sleepless nights, he replayed their sessions in his mind, searching for signs that he might be asking too much. Yet, whenever he saw Ethan's face light up at the mention of their next practice, or heard his laughter during their playful exercises, those worries faded. Ethan's determination reminded Carter why he'd embarked on this journey in the first place, to show someone that no dream was too big. Despite the challenges, there were moments of pure joy that kept them all going. One afternoon, as Ethan practiced shifting his weight, he accidentally took a single, shaky step forward. For a split second, he froze, his eyes widening in disbelief. Then, realizing what he'd done, he erupted into delighted giggles. "Did you see that?" he exclaimed, turning to Carter with a huge grin. Carter beamed back, ruffling Ethan's hair. "I sure did, champ. That's one step closer to your castle." These tiny triumphs fueled their resolve, proving that progress, even in its smallest form, was worth celebrating. With each passing day, Ethan grew more confident, not just in his body, but in himself. The impossible goal of walking unaided no longer seemed so far away. It was still a steep climb, but with Carter by his side and his family cheering him on, Ethan began to believe that he could reach the top of that magical road, one brave step at a time.